undoubtedly this partnership of all four stakeholders can truly help us meet the climate goals of Paris. I personally believe that now, with the current economics around renewable energy, we should not even be focusing on meeting these climate goals. It's time we started challenging ourselves to exceeding them, and exceeding them by a mile.
Thank you so much, very inspiring, and I think it is incredible that India again is innovative. You're going from a PPP to a 5P. That is certainly something which we all can learn from. But I think also your point on the subsidies, I've seen Betty from Aquabar here nodding very much. So I think I'd be very curious to hear some of the other experiences of panelists here. With that, let me continue and invite Mr. Adnan to provide his perspectives on really what has worked in getting us towards the Paris Agreement and concrete strategies there.
Thank you. First of all, let me say, I'm very delighted to watch Piyush Goyal discuss the question of coal in this forum, and the question of whether it constitutes a base load. But I think, President Calderon said probably the most fundamental thing in this whole discussion is the question of leadership. Because every other ingredient is basically there. And if you look around the world, in the drive to carbonization, there are many sectors. There's land use, there's agriculture, all sorts of things. But in the energy field, which we are discussing in this forum, it's very clear that there's an energy transformation going on, and if we are able to accelerate this transformation, if we are able to share technology, find the right business models, financing and policy frameworks, we have probably the best chance of decarbonization to the point that we can remain below 2 degrees. So our focus is laser-like on that. And why leadership is so important? I had the honor to be invited by Piyush under the aegis of the Prime Minister of India to the first Reinvest conference that took place last year in India. If you can imagine, coming from a very low base, that a country suddenly stands up and says it's committing to 175 gigawatts of new renewable power in a very short 7-year time frame, with the 100 coming from solar and 75 from wind and other technologies. That's a remarkable development. And if you look around, coming out of Paris, there was a focus on what is the practical action that can get us there. We have the African Renewable Energy Initiative now. Our ambition is to get 300 gigawatts of renewable power in the system by 2030. That will put Africa, which is probably one of the fastest growing in terms of energy demand, onto a sustainable trajectory, because if we don't do that, the availability of new hydrocarbon possibilities in Africa will take Africa in the high carbon direction. And that will have implications for the entire world. That's the same for Asia, it's the same for Latin America. So how do we do this? We've looked at, and President Calderon spoke about all of this. I hope he read our research, because we have exactly the same numbers in terms of cost declines in the major technologies, the deployment last 2 years, the new capacity additions to the global power sector, the majority has come from renewables. But there's a lot more to do. We're still at just over 18%, and we believe that we need 36% renewables in the system by 2030 to be within the target for carbon emissions. There are two things that have emerged from our work. There's a multitude of very interesting things that are happening on innovation, policy, and so on. But the two key things are, as Piyush said, the principal actors are going to be the private sector. The governments do not have the public resources that can even achieve 1/20th of what we need to achieve in terms of investment. Investment has to come from the private sector. Everybody talks about the fact that there are $2 trillion sitting at 1% interest looking for avenues to go to. Why is it not happening? That's the first issue. And, it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it's a role of governments. If you do not create a long-term, stable regulatory and policy framework where an investor comes, says, one, the ease of doing business in this economy is reducing my cost, and I'm confident that over the next 15 years I'll be able to recover my investment with the kind of returns I can achieve under this policy regime. If you don't have that confidence, you don't put your money on the table. So the first responsibility is for governments. How do you create a regulatory framework that can enable this higher scale of investment to begin to happen? But then, what are the financial instruments that are going to get us there? One of the things that struck me in the India discussion was the extraordinary impact that currency risk has in terms of raising premiums on financing. We know from the record that the bulk of renewable investment that's taken place is 90 to 95% reliable. There's a very small actual risk premium, but it is overpriced in the financial markets because the cost of capital that is coming into renewables is far too high. So we need to find instruments on how we mitigate this risk. And one of the areas where we're putting a lot of emphasis is what are the kind of international or multilateral risk guarantee mechanisms that we can deploy that can address things like technology risk, policy risk, can address issues of currency risk. Where are the innovative design of these mechanisms that we can bring at scale so that we reduce the cost of capex? The problem with renewables investment, it's not a problem, but the issue with renewables investment is that it's almost 100% upfront. I think every time Paddy gets involved in one investment, doesn't sleep for a few weeks, knowing that something can happen with that capex. And there are very few marginal cost additions down the road. So you actually have to recover your 100% of the lifetime of the project, and the cost of capital is really important in that sense. So we need to reduce the cost of capital. But we also need to increase the understanding of what innovation means. Innovation is not just technology. We know that technology is coming. We know that innovations in technology are reducing costs. We know that innovations in the big new emerging field of digitalization of grids, of digitalization of energy, of demand-side management, all of these things, additional storage in the system, etc., it's going to be revolutionary. But we need to get to that point where we can take advantage of this revolutionary development. And that point comes from innovation in policy, it comes from innovation in markets, and it comes from innovation in business models. That's where the real cost reduction is going to come in. Just to give you an example on markets, if you look at the sophistication of the European market today, or at least the German electricity market, German transmission system operators are now operating on 15-minute energy products. There are 1.7 million energy producers in the system. We cannot manage that through a centralized system. It has to be a market. There are 15-minute products in the market, and they are able to handle up to 45-50% renewables, variable renewables in their system through this market mechanism, which enables them to balance their various sources of energy. And also, added to that, the importance of the regional dimension, creating electricity networks that are bigger. If the Germans didn't have access to the rest of Europe, didn't have access to the hydro resources in Scandinavia, it would be immensely difficult to manage their variability in their system. So these are the kind of innovations, the business models that need to be developed further.